If any of the attendees are going to want to speak, could they please put their name in the chat so I know who that will be? And that's all I have.
Perfect then. And again, a reminder for the commissioners to make sure that you're keeping notes somewhere, or you have your official notes guide for public records, public hearing. So make sure we have that all done in that paperwork. All right, then, are we ready to go? All right, then we call this meeting of the Beaverton Traffic Commission to order. Today is March 4th, 2021. It is 7:06. Thank you everyone for attending. First up, roll call. And again, for record, please unmute and identify aye, yay, nay during votes as well. Commissioner Bobadilla?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Present.
Vice Chair McClean?
Here.
Commissioner Moore?
I think Ernie's frozen,
Yeah.
huh? Oh,
No, I
there
think
he is.
I'm waiting on, Sherry's not, I think she's unable to unmute. So we'll identify that Commissioner Moore is here. Commissioner Nakamura
Here.
and Commissioner Urbanski.
Here.
All right, thank you. Just a reminder for everyone that we do not have any official public hearings this evening. We do have a meeting to discuss the traffic calming program, and it will be informational. So there will be no change. However, we'll follow regular format, but there will be no official voting. So we'll take things as they come and try and work through our process as we can. The one thing we do have though first is regular staff comments. Mr. Khasho, is there anything?
I just want to make sure that you received the 2 emails I sent you with written comments. There was 4 of them total.
Yes, thank you. I did. I think some other people did as well.
All right.
So thank you.
Thank you.
With that in mind, then there is consent. The only thing on our consent agenda are the meeting minutes from the last time we met in February. And that is it. We would entertain a motion to approve, or if there is amendment or notification that we need to bring up.
I'll make a motion to approve February 4th minutes as written.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, Vice Chair McClean made a motion and Commissioner Nakamura second. This is consent agenda. All those in favor? Roll call. Commissioner Bobadilla?
Aye.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Vice Chair McClean?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Commissioner Nakamura?
Aye.
Commissioner Urbanski?
Aye.
And Chair Conway, aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. With that in mind, then we will move to the one workshop portion of our agenda. Mr. Khasho, I'll let you give us some information and kind of open it up as we go here.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, the neighborhood traffic calming program was adopted in 1998. And then in 2000, it was revised a little bit, few things, not much. And then in 2015, it was revised again. And I believe a few of the commissioners on this commission were at that time was involved with the latest revision on the program. So the neighborhood traffic calming program goals is improve neighborhood livability. And that's by reducing speeds and reducing cut-through traffic. And what happens from these two things, if you improve them, then people tend to do more walking, biking, and using transit. And that also will impact the environment. It will reduce the number of single vehicle occupancy, and taking transit will help the environment too by reducing emission gases. So all these are the goals of the neighborhood traffic calming program. The program in general, it's 3 phases. Phase 1 is a request and information sharing. Phase 2 is eligibility. And phase 3 is the project development. So phase 1, it's basically a written request to the city traffic engineer from anybody saying we need traffic calming on such street from here to here. Basically, we get requests from all over the city. The first thing we do is we coordinate with the police, and we connect those requesters with the police department too. So what the police department does is they do enforcement. Sometimes they deploy the speed trailer. Sometimes the photo radar, if there is locations they assigned for the photo radar in that neighborhood. So they do these things too. Also, we check the signing, is there speed limit signs? We look at all the signings, how the street is designed. So we try all these things. And after the police do their part of enforcement and education, and we do our minor engineering tweaks if we need to do some, then we'll do a speed study. We'll do a speed study on the street, and the traffic calming program requires that the city will do a minimum 7 days. And this will include weekdays and weekends. So we do a speed study on the street, and we'll determine if the street is eligible for the program or not. To be eligible, the 85th percentile speed, which is 85% of the drivers drive at or below the speed, must be 5 miles over the posted speed limit. So if the speed is 25, the posted speed on the street is 25, and the 85th percentile speed, the measured 85th percentile speed is 30, then that's one item that meets the eligibility criteria. If the street is a primary emergency route, then we cannot have any traffic calming on it. Then it got dropped. We will not continue that phase. We'll say you're not eligible. So we get requests from many residents. At one time, when we adopted the program in 1998, the city had a list of 35 neighborhoods that they were eligible for the program. But we did not have a written policy. We were just trying to work with the neighborhood. What do you want? We'll hire consultants to do the neighborhood meetings and the design, and it got too expensive. I remember we did a couple of projects, and just the design piece and the public involvement was around 250 grand. So the city said, we cannot keep going this way, so we have to adopt the program and follow a process, how we do things, and city staff has to do it. So we get all these requests, and we find that they are eligible. The minute we find that they are eligible, then we send the requester a petition. And we define the area on the street. Typically, people say, okay, I want traffic calming on First Street between Main Avenue and Lombard Avenue. So we look at that area and we pick every resident or business along the frontage of that street to be part of that petition. So we define which area the requester must need to go and pick signatures. So the requester will take that petition and go around and pick signatures. And to be eligible, to complete the eligibility criteria, 51% of those people who live or businesses on the street must say, yes, we need to start a program on the street. So the minute we get all these petitions, then we'll have a hearing by the Traffic Commission. And we rank each street based on the ranking criteria. It's in the program. And the ranking criteria, what it considers the amount of traffic, the speeds, is there sidewalks or not on the street, is there a school on the streets, or if there's a crosswalk that potentially could have 80 pedestrian crossing per day. So those are, and each element has a numeric value for it. So we rank each street that the petitions got in, and we give them a score. And based on the scores, then they'll get ranked 1, 2, 3, and so forth. The highest score will be number 1. So, and each year we like I said, one time we had 35 neighborhoods on the list. We cannot work with all of them. I mean, financially, we cannot afford this, and staff time. So typically, we work within 1 or 2 neighborhoods. In the past, I did 4 neighborhoods at once, but they were short streets, depending on the length of the street. So the smaller the streets, yeah, we could increase one or 2 more, but also we have to keep the funding in mind, how much funding we have through that fiscal year where we could spend on it. So after the ranking, we take the ranking to the Traffic Commission and we hold the hearing. And during this hearing, the Traffic Commission will decide which project to go through and start the project development phase. Also during this hearing, anybody who the city traffic engineer found they're ineligible for the program, they could ask to reconsider, and appeal the city traffic engineer's decision on it. I think from 20 some years, I think we only had 1. And the Traffic Commission basically said, okay, we're going to go with it, and we're going to consider this project as part of the ranked projects, and we continued the process. So that's how we select the projects. A project on the list that is eligible could stay on the list up to 4 years. And on the second year, we reevaluate that street. We'll see what happened. Are they still eligible or not? But if they are, they'll stay 4 years. Then after 4 years, they will be dropped off if they do not make it to the funding. They do not get funding and get to the next phase. But projects that they drop off the list, they can reapply and reevaluate it. So that's phase 2. Phase 3 is the project development. Basically, we work with the neighborhoods through neighborhood meetings, and we come up with a plan. And during these meetings, we go over the type of traffic calming devices that city can use. We are also open to use anything that they saw somewhere, and it makes sense to be, to use it. So it's not just what we use in the city. If there's other ideas, we're willing to accept it. So during these meetings, sometimes it takes 3, sometimes it takes 6 meetings to come up with the plan. Most of the time, during the development of the plan, we have more than one option because there's different ideas. And what we do, basically, we cut the street to 300-foot sections because that's the spacing for traffic calming devices. Typically, you want them spaced between 300, 350 to be efficient. So we try to split the street based on this dimension. We'll move it a little bit, either way, depending if there is driveways and what's manholes in the street and other things too. But during the meeting, there will be different opinion. Some people want speed humps. Some tell you, I want an island. Some tells you, I want an curb extension. So we'll say, okay, we'll have 3. We start with 3 different plans. And we'll just keep adding. We move, 350 feet, and we'll say, okay, what do you need here? So at the end, we could come up with 3 different options. But during the last meeting, we say, okay, now we have basically to take a vote during those meetings and see which option we're going to go with. Often, people will pick one of the 2 or 3. They agree on it. It's the people who attend the meeting, by the way. And I can't find a way, to bring everybody in the neighborhood to agree or disagree at the meeting. I wish everybody will show up. The funny thing, in the past, when we worked with neighborhoods that they truly had, speeding problems and cut-through traffic, the attendance was very high. Everybody wanted something done, and it was really easier to agree on a plan than these days. So the people who attend the meeting will decide which plan they want to go with. So we'll say, okay, we're gonna pick this plan. And after that meeting, we'll say, okay, well, it's not finalized yet. So we have to give a chance to other people to see what we pick. So maybe they like it, maybe they not. So what the city will do, we'll hold an open house to show the plan. We'll show the other options too. And if the plan does not get, negative feedback from people who attend the open house, we'll say, okay, we're gonna take it and do the voting piece basically on the plan. A couple of times during my career with the city, I had to go back and call the neighborhood again to tweak some of the plans because people did not like it. So we still do these things. So after this open house, the city will poll the plan. And what we do is we get a copy of the plan. We include the cover letter explaining what the project is. And also we include a yellow card that you have 3 options on it. Basically, you could vote yes, you could vote no, or you could abstain. Also, after we had the discussion with the traffic commission, we tweaked the letter and the card. And it says, if you don't send your card in, that it's an automatic no, basically. So we're letting the neighborhood know these things. So we send these packets out, and the program says we have to give 21 days for the cards to come back. And believe me, every time we extend that time period, we always extend it. We don't care. I mean, we're willing to take the cards until the time to take the plan to the traffic commission for approval. So if the neighborhood if the plan receives the 67%, then it will go for the traffic commission hearing on the plan, and anybody from anywhere can come testify for or against the plan. And so far, I haven't seen a plan that the Traffic Commission did not approve if it received the 67%. And who votes on the plan? The voting area, it's defined as people who live on the street. And if the street, it is longer than where the limits were identified, then we look at the ends of it. And it says 250 feet from the last traffic calming device on each end. So we go extra 250 feet on each end. Then each side street, we go 250 feet on each side if there is side streets. If it's a cul-de-sac, if it's a short cul-de-sac, we include everyone in the cul-de-sac. If it's a long cul-de-sac, we don't have cul-de-sacs over 200 feet in the city. So basically everybody will be included because it's their only access, basically. They're involved the same way as residents who live on the street itself. We also look if the traffic calming devices that are proposed on the street, if it will shift traffic to a parallel street. So if we feel there will be a traffic shift and cut through on other streets, we will include that street in the plan. And we will include the people who live on that street with the vote too, because it will become as one plan. And like I said, if the plan receives 67%, it comes to the Traffic Commission for a hearing. The Traffic Commission decision will go to the City Council and the final approval is by City Council. And typically we won't work with the project unless we have funding. And when we select the devices, we keep in mind how much money we have. What can we afford to do? Because sometimes people will ask, hey, I want a roundabout, or I want planted islands, or some fancy, planter or fancy plants. So we have to keep these things in mind. And we try to do our best. We try to please everyone, but it's really difficult to please everyone. There is always somebody that's not happy. And what happens during the meeting, they say we want speed humps. We ask, how many of you would like speed humps? And everybody raises his hand. And as we go through, there is this speed hump in front of somebody's home. Maybe they can see it from the window. They tell you, no, I don't want it. I changed my mind. So you have to start tweaking, moving things around. We try to keep things at the property line where it doesn't bother anybody, but sometimes it's impossible to do it. I mean, we try. So those are the challenges that we have during implementing the plan. And lately, we worked with several neighborhoods, and it seems a lot of them did not make that 67%. To be honest, we treat everybody the same. I don't know why people don't return their cards. And unless you have questions for me about the program at this moment, I would like to switch over to Tony, Mr. Tony Chau. He's a project engineer that has been working with the neighborhoods recently, and he could go over what we did before COVID and during COVID too. So I'll stop here and see if there is any questions from the commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Khasho, sorry, Mr. Khasho. Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, but we'll go in order. First, Commissioner Bobadilla, and then Commissioner Urbanski.
Khasho, why is the type of majority of 67%? Why not a simple majority of 51?
Our traffic calming program, when it was developed, it wasn't just a number that we picked from the air. The reason why it's so high, it was two things. People who live on the street need to accept those devices because they come in and it's really hard to come out. and it's really expensive to try something. And then they say, I tell you, I don't like it, you know, I want it out. So that's why the percentage is high. The other thing, I said the financial impact of it. So we have to make sure that our money is spent wisely, where people are really happy with it, and it will do the job.
Thank you. Commissioner Urbanski was next, and then Commissioner Moore.
Does every household get the same weighting for their vote? Because clearly the people who are going to have, let's say, the calming devices outside their house are going to be much more affected. They're the ones that are going to be putting up with cars revving up as they go over the bumps, the brakes squealing as cars come down. Their suspension is going to be more wrecked than anybody else's, perhaps. So should they have more weighting to their vote?
Well, the way currently the program works, it says each tax lot will have one vote, and each resident or business will have one vote. But when we say tax lot and it's a single family home, it means that homeowner, basically. So each homeowner will get one. If the property is a rental, then the owner will get a card and the renter will get a card, and only one person per resident will vote.
I guess what I'm saying is not everybody will be affected because there are some negative consequences, and not everybody will feel the negative consequences. The people on the street with the calming devices will get some extra benefits, especially if their kids are playing out there in the front yard, but they will also maybe not get as much peace in the evenings as cars screech to a halt as they're going over bumps.
And when we work on the plan with the neighborhoods, we tell them that, we say, speed humps are the most effective, but we go over the positive and negative things of each device. So we tell them, you have speed humps. Yeah, it works very good. It's a sleeping policeman, but you have to deal with the noise, especially if you have a landscape truck, go over it. Yeah, it rattles, it makes noise. That's why the way we set them up, we make sure it's away from windows and doors. And like you said, people who are, if it's in front of my home, I'll be the most affected by it because of the noise. But the program doesn't differentiate this, you get to vote like the rest of it. That's why when we work on the plan, we want to make sure that when we set the device on a certain spot, people are happy with it and they're accepting it.
And usually if they object to having the device outside of their property, you try to accommodate that, you said?
We do.
Okay.
Yes, we do. Or, or we'll try a different device that is not as noisy if we can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Moore, you were next.
Thank you. Mr. Khasho, perhaps the answer to my question is the same as you gave to Commissioner Bobadilla, but I was curious as to why a failure to vote counts as a no, when often when one fails to communicate one's assent or fails to say that they don't agree, then it counts as a positive. Why did we go with saying failure to respond is no, rather than if you don't respond, we're assuming you agree with what's going on with the traffic calming?
No, if they do not respond, it's a no.
Understood. I was curious as to how we came to that
How we
conclusion.
came to this decision.
Yes, sir.
Then, like I said before, it's we have to make sure that everybody wants that project. That's why it was chosen this way. And at the time when this program came up, I wasn't the traffic engineer at the time. Randy Woolley was the traffic engineer. I was a project engineer. I was in charge of the traffic calming program. So I worked with him on it when we developed this. And the criteria, we did the research, even nationally and even internationally. we got many ideas from Denmark. We got many ideas from the East Coast, and we became leaders actually with the traffic calming. So it's what other agencies used, also our experience. I don't know if many of you were here when Hart Road had speed humps. It was before my time, and I heard they changed them like 3 times before they ended up with what we have now. 3 times. And that's a lot of expense and money to keep changing and designing. And so that's why the high percentage was picked up.
As you may know, I was curious because I live on a street where they had a project that got approval for going forward. People voted, and then when it came back for voting the second time, it didn't go through, partially because I felt like they were overwhelmed with needing to respond again and again. And there was just kind of fatigue with continuing to keep the level of citizenship, if you would, such that they needed to respond to just a simple mailer, but it seems as though that's really a lot for people these days. I'm not sure why, but when it becomes vote and vote again, we lose a great deal of the community support when it doesn't happen immediately.
It only
That's been
takes
my
one
observation.
vote. We do it only once, the voting.
Yes, they have the first, there was a,
The
the way-
petition, you mean?
yes, the petition and then the actual vote. And we did okay with the petition, but when it came time to vote, we lost the community's interest, if you would. They were not able to stay focused on that long enough to complete the project. And I think that's partially because some people were in favor, but by the time we got around to voting, they just didn't send the card in, which means it's a no automatically. But
Also,
I understand why.
Also, I didn't mention that when we do the voting, pre-COVID, what we did is we worked with the requester. And sometimes during these meetings, we'll tell people, hey, you need to kind of form a group that they will go around, knock on doors, canvass the neighborhood, and ask people to return their cards. And we tell them, if somebody tells you, I lost my card, or I mailed it, the city did not get it, we will mail them another card. If they tell you this, as long as you give us the address, we will do this. And I mean, we work with the neighborhood to the last minute. I went out and hand delivered cards, like a couple of hours before the deadline. So we do everything we can in our power to make sure we accommodate everyone. But to be honest with you, I don't know why people do it. And I want to let Tony, after the questions, Tony will tell you what we did recently, and you'll be surprised.
Thank you. On that, one follow-up to that, what Commissioner Moore had was, and maybe Tony, you can, if you want to defer this, Mr. Khasho, to Tony's discussion. Early on, you said a lot of it was cut through traffic. I think in my tenure here on the commission, speed was a concern for some, but cut through seemed to be the bigger issue. But in the end, I guess to Commissioner Moore's point, they don't really seem to be an issue later on. It's like they're very concerned and then it goes away. So is it a mix of cut through, actual speeding, or a combination of both? Because I think the last few times it seems to be more on they want to defer, they want some sort of traffic calming that makes people go somewhere else, not necessarily speeding. Is that a correct recap? And then I believe Vice Chair McClean had a question.
Would you like me to answer, or?
Well, it might be, if you want to let Tony just answer that, that's fine too. I just wondered, I'd like to see that recapped at some point in the sense of what the purpose is and intent when they do approach us. What's the requester's really goal?
I was waiting for Commissioner McClean if he want to ask something before.
Okay, let's do that.
I just wanted to add to Mr. Khasho's answer that Commissioner Moore asked about why a no, why not sending it is a no. It's also because the current calming program does not have a minimum requirement. So if, let's say, we mailed out 100 cards and we only got 11 back, 6 yes, 5 no, is that sufficient to install? So having that no response is also kind of a way to make sure we get enough participation. We did discuss in the past about having a minimum and then a simple majority. So instead of 67% of what we mail, it was discussed in the past, if we mail whatever, we need to get 50% response or more, and then whatever that simple majority of the responding. But that unfortunately did not pass a previous, traffic commission. So there are things that we've talked about that, but I think just to add to that, your question, it's because there isn't a current minimum. So that's why also no response is a no.
Yeah, that's a good point. We did discuss that, I think, for everybody, for the new commissioners as well. We had the discussion about, I want to say 3 years ago, Vice Chair, and in that discussion, we did have that was one of the crux of the back and forth of how do you gauge that and what do you do when people don't reply? And the concern was we're not hearing everyone's voice, or maybe they're making a statement of saying, yeah, I don't like this at all, but I'm not going to vote no. I'll just let it go, because that's basically saying no. So that was a big question, and we spent a lot of time going through that. And then what was fair if we sent out 100 cards and 10 people answered and it was 6-4? Is that a majority? You're only hearing from 10% of the people. So yeah, excellent point. Thanks, Vice Chair McClean. Mr. Khasho, did you want to go on, or Tony, did you want to?
Regarding your comment about, speed or cut through traffic. I mean, typically the speeders are people who live on the street most of the time. If a neighborhood has a cut through traffic problem, cut through traffic are always speeding because they're looking for a shorter, quicker route.
It also depends on the characteristic of the road. Like if you look at Duncan Lane, that made it like 2 years ago, Duncan Lane was more of a cut through traffic issue. Whereas if you look at like Sexton Mountain Drive, that completed the whole process and made it through to actual project installation, that was more of a speeding concern. So it really depends on the characteristic of the road too.
Thank you.
Yeah, and when you work on a cut through problem, typically what fixes cut through is speed humps. I mean, it's the most effective and it works. So the neighborhood says, yeah, okay, we need speed humps. We don't want anybody to go out through our neighborhood. So they choose speed humps. But then some of their neighbors, they don't want the speed humps because they have to drive. And that's where, it's really tough to get that 67%. They say, okay, I don't want to show anybody at the meeting that I don't like it, but I will not send my card, or they'll vote no on it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Urbanski, and then it should be Commissioner Brown, then Commissioner Urbanski.
Mr. Khasho, just out of curiosity, if projects don't make it to 67%, do you have a sense of if the standard had been 51%, more of them would have gotten through, or is there a lower number that they tend to achieve, that if one were to change the standard, there'd be greater neighborhood success, if you will?
So, sorry. So yeah, I have Excel that will share with you in a second. That will show you the numbers of each project, which made it and which one didn't make it. You can see the number. I'll share in a second Excel.
Thank you. So you're going to answer that later on in a.
Yeah, I think it's better if we go over it all at once.
Okay, very good. Then Commissioner Urbanski.
Mr. Khasho, looking at the procedures list on number 4, it says to get the ball rolling, the petition has to have a simple majority of 51%.
Yeah.
Right. But if you want to have speed bumps, let's say, removed in item 12, the petition has to have 67%. Why
Yeah.
is there that discrepancy? In one case, you only need 51%, but to get the ball rolling to try and get something changed, because things will change, the neighborhood will change, people will have electric cars, could be various reasons. But now
Yeah.
it takes 67% to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, at the time, they decided that to take them out, it's the same percentage as to have them in. It's different than starting the process.
But it's not
Because
quite the
they wanna
same
make
because,
sure that,
but it's not the same because to get them put in, you send out cards to all of the houses, but in item 12, my understanding, the way I'm reading it, is the petitioner has to go around all the houses and get everybody to sign the petition, which isn't quite the same.
yeah. Yeah, instead of sending a card, then they have to sign a petition. You know, that's how it's set. Although it's the same method as getting the petition in to start the program. Yeah, I agree.
But
with
only
you.
51%.
Yeah, that's
the point you're
51% just to start the program. It's not to approve a plan or have them in yet. But to take them out, they want to make sure that people who live on the street are also supporting it to take it out. That's why it's, 67%.
And to be clear, Mr. Khasho, there is really no discussion if the item 12, what did you, if the petition is signed and you get the 67% saying they want it removed, there's not really a discussion of what you're going to remove. You're taking it all out. It's not like, well, I'm taking this one speed bump out, it seems like. Is that correct? Or is this?
Sometimes it's people ask for one. And during my career with the city, I've seen it 3 times. People requested to take one speed hump out, and none of them were successful. They didn't even, make the 51%.
All right. Very good. Other questions? All right then, Mr. Chau, did you want to give us a recap?
I'd like to share some Excel right now that you share my screen and show you the Excel that we recently have. Let's see. Okay. So can everyone see the Excel before I continue with Excel?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so what happened is I'll go for the bottom chart first, and then I'll go for the upper chart. So if you look at 2017, there's one project that submitted, 130th Avenue, and it got 71% support to move on the process to go to the next step, which is it was in step 2. And in 2018, 5 projects submitted the petition, and if Duncan Lane, Wilson Avenue, Sexton Mountain Drive, and Bonnie Bray Street, they all made it, and then Mallow didn't. And you can see the percentages of the support they got to get through the 51% support. And in 2019, only 1 submitted, which is Barlow Road, and it got 66%. And in 2020, we mailed 4 out, and then 2 of them made it, which is 155th Terrace and 155th Avenue. And the 2 of them did not make it, and you see the percentages. Any question about the 51% support for those projects?
From our experience, the 51% is not that hard to get.
And as you can see from this chart, only 3 projects failed to make it 51%.
Tony, so just to clarify, you're talking about the phase 3 voting.
No, this is phase 2. Phase 2 to get the project assigned. This is the
okay, phase 2. Okay, that's one.
Get from ranking list to get on the ranking list.
Okay.
So any other question related to get on the ranking list and get the project support project design? Okay, so if you have no question, then we can go to support survey, which is the one where we will do the project design. We'll meet with the citizens, and then this is the votes that we got at the end. 130th Avenue at the end got 38% support, around almost 49, and then it did not make it. Wilson Avenue in 2019 got 54%, and it did not make it. Sexton Mountain Drive, west of Murray, made it, and it got 74% support. Barlow Road and Bonnie Brae. So what happened, it was in 2020, and in March of 2020, COVID happened, and then we had to switch to a virtual meeting system. So we took a few months off, and we're hoping the pandemic will calm down, and it did not. So we switched to virtual meetings, and then we completed the meeting process. And then when we sent out plans, we sent it out 3 times, and so far it's still at 50% support for the highest, which is highest supporting project, which is Bonnie Brae Street. So even if you look at the 51% support, the only other project that would have made it through the years would have been Wilson Avenue. And then this year, looking at the numbers, we mailed out 3 times, and Bonnie Brae and Barlow has not made it yet. And then any question on that chart?
Not right now, thank you. Anyone else?
So I'll stop sharing my screen at this point. So what that shows is that to get 67% support is pretty hard, but it can be done.
And oh, I'm sorry, go on, Mr. Chau.
Oh, yeah, and then you can see that if you do 51% support, one other project would have made it, but the other 2 would not have made it as of today.
Okay. Is there a sense, as Mr. Khasho has said, how many community members and the petitioner included have gone out and helped to encourage return of the ballots?
I remember from 131st Avenue, we asked people to go out and, to canvass the neighborhood, and we did not get any response from them. We tried emailing them, we tried to call, and nobody wanted to respond. I mean, we staff don't have the time, go say, hey, probably will be treated a little different than if your neighbor showed up and told you, hey, could you send your petition in or send your card in? I mean, Bonnie Brae and Barlow, we sent the first batch, which is 100%. We sent it out. We gave them, I don't know, over the 3 weeks, we gave them additional 3-4 weeks, and they didn't get them. So we looked at the addresses who did not return their cards, and we prepared new packets, and we sent it again. They did not make it. And we did it another time. I mean, the last time, I think we got 1 card back. Out of how many, Tony? You could
we mailed out the last cycle, we mailed out around 40 packets from each road, and we only got like 2 back total. And then 1 was a return to address.
So I understand these days, people don't check their mail as often as they used to do in the past. I mean, nowadays people do all their billing online. They just get the ads, or unless you have a packet coming in the mail, that's when you check your mail. Probably people check their mails maybe twice a week. But still, if they do this, there will be this traffic calming packet in there, And
are the envelopes identified somehow as a ballot, or are they colored, or is there? I know the postcards are yellow.
No, it's just a city envelope from the outside.
Okay.
I mean, one thing we did in the past years ago, I used to use fluorescent stickers, and it says traffic calming response card in it. I don't know if it will help or not, but we could do these things. But when you receive that packet 3 times, I mean, come on.
Okay.
You have the courage to open it.
Is there is the process require either state law or city ordinance that the ballots result be public, or is this a private? Is there a
No, we
concern? I guess,
don't,
is there a concern that somebody's going to know whether I voted yes or no?
we don't call it a ballot. We call it a response
Survey.
card.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not a ballot, no.
But is there a sense that there's a concern about not necessarily security, but privacy, as if, I'm gonna have
Yeah.
my piece, but I want my neighbors to know what I said?
I'm sure there is some of this, but we don't, the thing is, when the cards come in, they become public record, regardless.
Okay.
If somebody wanna come say, hey, I need to check. I mean, I had people coming in and they were telling me I'm lying, that the project did not make the 67%. And I had to get all the cards out and show them who sent it, who did not, and how many, and did the calculations in front of them. Sometimes it gets ugly, to be honest with you. So that's why we try to keep everything, by the word. It just, you'll never know. They'll come out of the woods.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Brown, you had a question?
Mr. Khasho, I'm just curious about this issue of people losing interest, I guess. So how much time typically elapses from the point when you get an initial 51% want to participate to the point where you try to get 67% and you can't get it? I mean, is that a year? Is that 2 years?
No, typically it's like I said, 4 meetings, and we do a meeting every month. So it will be 4 to 5 months.
And the 4 to 5 takes from when? From the time the petitioner responds, or the 51%, or the approval on the rankings?
The approval on the rankings.
Okay.
It's a long process.
All right. One follow-up, I think, to that we've talked about in the past, based on the numbers that have come in for the project rankings that have actually qualified, I don't believe that we've had numbers that really didn't make the requirement. I believe that you had noted, Mr. Khasho, that typically that one of them is guaranteed to be completed given the budget. Oftentimes 2 are pretty solid, and depending on how much and the decisions that the first 2 make, you may even get the third into a budget year. I don't believe that we've actually seen that many, except for 2 years ago or something. I think that were there 4, but is the time from after the commission does the ranking, I guess, what's the maximum amount of time between when they would request this, it would get into the queue, we would address it as traffic commission, and then it would be ranked, and then they could begin work?
You mean they remain on the list after we pick the eligible ones to work with?
No, sir. Sorry, I didn't ask that right. A petitioner comes in and gets their 51%. They are early in the calendar year, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
By the time the traffic commission does the rankings for the annual rankings, what is the maximum amount of time that they could sit? Almost a year?
It's 9 months. Typically, they say that the criteria says, or the program says, all petitions or requests received by September 30th. Then we'll take it to the traffic commission. So they
Okay.
wait 9 months maximum.
Okay, so if they put it in October, November, they're going to wait until next September.
It depends. If the hearing did not happen, sometimes we have the hearing in October, sometimes November, sometimes depending on the schedule. But if
Right.
we have it, we'll bring it in if they have the petition in. Yeah. But
Okay.
typically we send the petitions all at once. We don't send them, sporadically. But we tell them that your project made it, but we'll send you later on a petition to collect signatures. So we inform them of the process. And before we get to phase 2, we make sure they understand the project, the process too. And we emphasize that it's a long process and read through it, and it takes lots of effort. So we explained all these things to the requester. The problem is not the people who request the project. They'll go through, they'll continue working. It's just the people who to agree on the plan and get that support. That's the disconnect happens at the end. I mean, there is always energy to come up with the plan. There is no lack of energy to do this. It's just when the vote comes, also the dynamic through the meetings, sometimes people, we keep encouraging it. Please speak up. If you don't like it, tell us. It's easier to deal with it during the meetings than waiting till the end. But some people, they don't like to object or say, no, I don't want it. I mean, sometimes we get calls after the meetings. Hey, I was at the meeting. I'm disagreeing with the location of this device. Could you please move it? So the next meeting will say, okay, one of your neighbors doesn't like this device to be here. Let's arrange it a little bit different and move it away. So we try our best to please everyone, but it's just that people returning their cards, that's the hard problem.
Right. One point I think that Commissioner McClean and I, or Vice Chair McClean and I have seen before, though, and I believe that he was around for that as well, is we went through the process for, I believe it was Cambry Avenue. And as I recall in that one, they went through the process and the neighbors could not decide amongst themselves. And eventually they just, if I'm not mistaken, they pretty much just gave up and went away. So they didn't really need to get 67% because they couldn't even get a consensus among themselves. Is that?
The Pioneer Road, they were able to get a consensus, but because of the calming, we had to include Cambry as well. But that one, it did take 3. I remember, going to the meetings at like the elementary school, and there were discussion on to what to agree. Not everybody agreed initially, but I think having Jabra mediate those type of discussions, people raising their hand, who agrees, who disagrees, they were able to actually agree on something. And in that one, they had some individuals that were highly motivated to, do the canvassing and to get everyone to return their yellow cards. So that one did get approved. But initially, it didn't meet the eligibility criteria because of that. I think the 85th percentile wasn't speeding. And most of that, I think most of their concerns was cut through traffic more than speeding. Right. So they had to appeal originally, and the traffic commission passed. And then they did agree eventually, and they got their 67% in. And that was Pioneer Road in Cambry.
That's right, because they did add this. They did have to add the second road because of the impact, because they were just going to go one street up and over. Okay. I was trying to recall, though. I thought, Mr. Khasho, at one point during a recap, that there was at least one neighborhood that never did come to consolidation, or was I mistaken on that? I mean, is that an occurrence?
I said one neighborhood did not meet the eligibility, but they appealed the city traffic engineer decision, and that was Pioneer Street.
No, sorry. What I meant was they get into the rankings and they begin the discussion, but unlike Pioneer and Cambry, where they ended up coming together and finding consensus, I thought that there was one neighborhood where they were into the rankings. You began the meetings with them, and some people wanted speed bumps, some people wanted restricted lane. They went back and forth, and then they elapsed to the point. I think it took them like over a year, and then finally they just gave up because they couldn't come to a consensus. Was that not correct? Just
no, I had one neighborhood. It was Davies Road, and
okay.
They went through the 51%. They were eligible. We went through the whole process. Then when we started the meetings to come up with the plan, there was some neighbor who just rallied the neighborhood and convince them they don't need it. And they told me basically, go away, we don't want the project. I mean, I only, we went to one meeting, and then we sent a letter also to the neighborhood telling them what happened. And if they feel it's different, let us know. So we will do something else. But yeah, that's how it ended up.
Okay, very good, very good. I wanted to clarify that because I thought that it was a more, I was wondering if it was a more common issue that the neighborhood area couldn't actually come together. So, okay, thank you. Other questions, comments? All right, sounds good. I believe we have the other testimony from the written entries that were put in. I'm not sure if I believe that.
Yes, there are 2 attendees who would like to speak.
All right, I believe that we just like as we would in a public hearing, if there is something different than what has already been submitted in testimony, we would love to hear that. But if you're going to recount what was already written and submitted, then please try and keep your comments concise. So with that then, Stephanie, who's the first person?
I
Mr.
have
Chair,
Connect. Yes, Jabra.
Mr. Chair, I just have one request. Could you please allow them to speak over the 5 minutes that we typically let them speak when somebody testifies?
Yes, I think we can do that. Yeah, as long as there's new information that is not part of the that's not part of what's been written. I think that helps, unless you're stating specifically that you're reading your.
Yeah, we'd like to get the most out of to hear what they're trying to tell us. So we'll probably consider it in future discussion about the traffic calming program. So thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, Connect, I will allow you to speak now.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. It was very enlightening. I'm going to read from notes, and I should finish in 5 minutes. My name's Kenneth Etheridge, and I am a 20-year homeowner in the Highland neighborhood, and went to Beaverton High School and have been part of the community for some time. I am sure you're aware, we've talked about the 3 different traffic calming processes recently engaged in by our neighborhood. We appreciate that the work done by the residents and the commission to review these requests. And there are others that will speak to the details of the current process. What I would like to talk about is an additional process, or to suggest an additional process. My concern is that a street-by-street approach to neighborhood traffic issues will not always be the best way to address the problems of a neighborhood, particularly with pass-through traffic. We need an additional tool for when multiple streets or the entire neighborhood is threatened by detrimental increases in traffic. In short, I would like to see an expansion of traffic commission policy to include an option that engages the larger community when these traffic activities are affecting the neighborhood more broadly. In order to determine if that is possible, what I would like to request is that a committee be formed of traffic commission members, as well as members from the neighborhood associations, to discuss and hopefully develop a process which can be added to our toolkit. Why is this necessary? Well, some of what Mr. Khasho has talked about today, I kind of explains it to me, is that our efforts to internally fix some of our problems are not always met with success. And also the problems of traffic in our neighborhood are not always limited to, or do not always happen, are are not always internally generated. But why would this be necessary? Well, my first is that residents are not always limited to this. We are currently dealing with our problems on a street by street basis, and our residents' concerns for their neighborhood are not always limited to the street they live on. The impact of change in one area of the neighborhood may well result in an unintended impact on other parts of the neighborhood. I think we mentioned that we had 2 roads connecting to an arterial, and that traffic on one road, traffic controls on one road may lead to an increase in traffic to the other. A review project may also be of concern to individuals not designated as voting individuals, such as parents of children who walk home from school, having a home that is more than the 150 or 250 feet from the street project, or where the problem can't be solved effectively by a street-by-street process. That's such as my street, where my street is the 3rd of 4 streets used by drivers taking Hargis to get to Hart Road as a way of avoiding speed bumps and stop signs. Secondly, many of our problems may stem from traffic demands, as I said, originating outside of the neighborhood or even the city, and we'll need to be able to appeal to our traffic commission and other officials regarding the livability and safety of our neighborhoods when this occurs. This may happen due to increased population density. It may happen, sorry. It may happen as people are working more from home and traveling more in their neighborhoods. It may happen when we find ourselves in a food or energy desert and have to travel to another residential area. It may happen when commercial businesses are developed and patterns of transportation change. What I'm hoping for is an expanded engagement process facilitated by the commission. I do not expect that this is a decision-making process. However, as connected as the neighborhood associations are to the experience of our neighborhoods, it seems this would be beneficial opportunity to engage our growing community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Typically in the public hearing, we would, are there any questions though of Ms. Etheridge? Thank you. I appreciate your time, Kenneth, for speaking and taking part in this, definitely. I guess as a follow-up to that, Mr. Khasho, the transportation system plan, is that made available to the NACs? I note that Ms. Etheridge is part of the NAC board. So when the traffic calming are brought up in a holistic view, as she notes, are they presented with the transportation system plan to see what Washington County and Beaverton have identified other roads are? Because I know that we've had some discussions about what's the difference between local road and street, what's an arterial, what's a collector, and the difference in variations thereof. Are they made aware of that and provided a transportation plan?
We discuss these things during the meetings, depending on the street classification. Yeah, we talk about it, but we don't get in depth, as far as the transportation system plan or what the county transportation system plan is. It's a huge document. But if somebody is interested, it's available online and they can get to it.
Okay, because I wonder if that perhaps, and it's a side digression, I know that we can discuss it another time, but I wonder if that's something that maybe the NAC should take a leadership role. I think BCCI definitely needs to be looking at options that go across the city, and maybe they could present what the TSP means within a NAC so that they understand what the vision is. We already have a vision of that, so maybe it would help them to see what it is.
It's during the update, if the NAC is interested in the TSP is when they start the update for the transportation system plan. I'm sure they'll be looking for our members to be part of the stakeholder advisory committee, which is probably the NAC chairs and the public in general. They can participate in the process and have input on it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Stephanie, I believe there was another comment or one more.
There's actually two more, so we'll start with Adam.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I made him a panelist.
We ready?
Yes.
All right, my name is Adam Gretzinger. I live in Beaverton on 140th. I am also the chair of the Highland NAC. I serve alongside Kenneth, who you heard from previously. I submitted written testimony and I don't want to rehash all of it. And I appreciate the commission taking the first step of just talking about this. And I think that's something we need is to discuss the consent process and to allow government to work without being held hostage to people who do not respond for whatever reason, that the rest of us can move on and have a way to govern ourselves and keep each other safe. And I would just like to pose to the commission that if somebody doesn't vote for the governor or doesn't vote for their state legislator, they're still bound by the laws. They can still be arrested. They can still get a ticket. They can still be subject to the civil law. And their lack of involvement doesn't mean that the rest of us don't have a right to proceed. And I would just like this to see the city take an additional risk management step to look at near misses, stop sign non-compliance, and risk of danger to particularly school children as part of the process, and also to point out that the school district does not vote. Special districts, it is my understanding, do not vote, and those would be counted as no's when they have property. We had 3 projects in the Highland neighborhood in recent years. All 3 failed. So at least for the citizens in this neighborhood, it is their opinion that this process is not working. And I just would like to ask you to consider the staff time used to prepare these plans and have these meetings. You know, I know these professionals cost money, and having plans developed that go nowhere is not to anybody's benefit. And with that, I'll yield back my time. Thank you.
Thank you. One question there, Mr. Gretzinger, and I appreciate your time. As always, we appreciate everybody taking involvement. As an ACT chair, I totally can relate to what you're doing, as can Commissioner Moore for sure. And I believe some other commissioners are also involved in their NACs as well. I guess one question that we have faced in the past is the difference between knowing that someone just doesn't want to be involved and someone who feels that there's not an issue. Is there a way for the commission to make a distinction when I see that not voting is the same as saying no? That's very clear. I think the card probably indicates that as well. So if I get back a limited amount of cards, how do I make the distinction that those that are remaining silent are doing so because they don't feel there's an issue, or that they're really, you know, they're going to be a stick in the mud? Is there a way to, is there a suggestion? Did that come up in some of your discussions?
We did not cover that, but there are other examples of this sort of scenario. If we look at a double majority tax raise issue where you know, you need to have a certain number of voters vote in order to raise taxes. That is one example that is done elsewhere in state law that you could maybe reference. And in those cases, they use just 50% type numbers. But with whatever reason people choose not to respond, maybe they hate government, maybe they're too old, maybe they're infirm, maybe they just don't read their mail. We never really know why they may not respond. And
right,
if
I'm
the
not
threshold
trying,
was to be lowered, I think maybe there is a way the consent process could be safe. I certainly agree with the engineer's opinion that we don't want to uninstall any of these traffic calming measures because it would be a waste.
Right, and I said, right, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It just, as the commission, one of the things we struggle with is, what do we do when somebody brings up an issue and nobody else responds? Is it the one person who feels that it's it's something we have to balance and something we discuss. So I was just curious if you, as NAC chair and in the discussions, I know the BCCI had a meeting. There was a lot of communication and I wondered if any of that had come out. So appreciate your time. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And then I believe, Stephanie, we have one other question or one other speaker.
Yes, let me find.
And again, we appreciate everybody's time and effort and always appreciate you being involved in the process.
Okay, this is Terry.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Terry.
Okay, thank you. Very good discussion tonight, and I did submit a letter on behalf of BCCI Group. And as some of you may know, we agreed to collaborate on a work group on this a year ago, and then the pandemic hit and it kind of ground to a halt. So wasn't quite sure what prompted this discussion other than it's a really great topic to, I guess, keep on everybody's mind. But if there was some thought about creating a work group for future considerations of changes, be they either minor or major. There are members of BCCI, and if anybody doesn't know what that means, that's the Beaverton Committee for Community Involvement, one of our city committees. We would be happy to participate. And, you know, one thought that kind of emerged just by listening to the discussions this evening is maybe there could be some low-hanging fruit, like the support survey document itself. If it's in the city of Beaverton white envelope, that might not be the kind of messaging, a slight change to that with, like Jabra was saying, he used a fluorescent sticker or something, please return your ballot or something like that could be a low-hanging fruit that could lead to more success. Anyway, that's just an idea, but I think if there's an interest in the Traffic Commission to kind of consider this on a more like a work group kind of a fashion, I think members of BCCI would be happy to Zoom with you at any future date. So thank you. Question?
Sorry, I was on mute there. I didn't get my button. Commissioner Urbanski?
A question for Ms. Lawler. So in your letter, you suggest that maybe you should scrap the 67% yes vote and go with a simple majority of 51%. Now, over the years after traffic calming, let's say speed bumps are installed, the neighborhood may change, circumstances may change, everybody may have electric cars, etc., etc. So there's a provision to allow people to vote to have those traffic calming devices removed. That also is a 67% vote that is required. So would you be in favor of reducing that to a 51% simple majority as well? In other words, if it only takes 51% to get things installed, would you also then be in favor of requiring just a simple 51% majority to having devices removed if necessary at a future date?
Well, yes, okay. I really don't know the answer to that. I think that you guys are much better versed in the intricacies of this, but I guess that's the kind of question that could be pursued in kind of a working group format. My personal opinion is that makes a lot of sense to me, but then again, I may not know the full ramifications as the Traffic Commission may want, as Traffic Commission may have, given your depth of experience in these matters. But I'd be happy to talk about it at a future, that is being something that we could talk about in a work group.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, appreciate your time. Thank you, Terry, and appreciate all the work that BCCI is doing for that. I do think that from a city standpoint, there are many things that individual NACs have faced. My NAC, for one, that really was trying to deal with something that was really a citywide issue. And I think that there are some things, the homeless was a huge concern that some NACs experienced a tremendous amount of hotspots and situations they had to face. And those were not NAC items. Those are citywide items that I think BCCI is much better and well equipped to handle. So I appreciate them taking it on. I would consider, I think, as part of your information with your suggestion for subgroups would be to take a look at what the NACs understand and know about the TSP and how much they understand what the vision is, and do they understand the streets that have already been identified as they're going to remain 2-lane. They're going to go to 3. We're going to make them an arterial at some point. They're going to become, this is the vision that the city has and also the county has. And then ODOT, not as much, but there are definitely some considerations as well, and those are all laid out. So I wonder, that might be a good place to start as well, to have BCCI kind of communicate that back out and work through what's the TSP vision. And the next time, as Mr. Khasho noted, the next time that comes up, stakeholders and, those are not, same as we did. I served on one in Washington County a couple of years ago. Those are not set in stone. They're living documents that will continue on, but they are definitely already identified streets and places and visions of how the traffic is going to go and flow. And one of the things we looked at was how disjointed Western Beaverton was, and how did that end up that way? And it was, we did not have a good TSP at the time. And now that roads are trying to be connected, you're wondering why, like 173rd and Roy Rogers, how in the world did that ever get offset, and why did they need to go through what they did? It's such a costly expense later on. So bit of a digression, but I think it would be something curious to know. BCCI would take that as part of the first step to get the NACs going in that, so that when we come up, it might be helpful in this process as well. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Yeah, Sergeant, sir. Sergeant Shaw.
I just thought Mr. Khasho mentioned us being involved early on in this process and being collaborative with them. I just maybe would like to put in perspective a little bit about that. Last year we got somewhere around 500 traffic complaints through the year, whether it be via the webmail or people calling in on the hotline. And I have one of my traffic officers is assigned to take all that information and sort of develop where those hotspots are for community members to really try and hit those areas that are most effective or affected. So as you guys reach out and touch all the people that you do, I would encourage them to continue to use those lines, whether it be online or by phone to us, because we do respond to those. She does collate all those into a package. So we do missions specific to our traffic team to go out there and really try and calm the traffic that's moving through the neighborhoods. And unfortunately, there's spots that obviously we could enforce 24/7, and we still would continue to be enforcing them, 5 years from now, because people just continue to do violate the traffic laws there. So those, I think, are the appropriate ones to move to the city and really try and look at the engineering end of things to try and figure out how we solve that problem, because it becomes an engineering problem that we can't solve as law enforcement. But again, as you touch all those people in your lives, just continue to have them call and talk to us, because we do respond with a variety of different things. We just got in the mail today a new, what we call the black box, which we attach to phone poles and light posts, and we can monitor for 5 to 7 days just on the police side of traffic. And we can do both directions on roads. We did Murray just the other day. And we're able to do all 4 lanes on Murray near Beard. Those kind of things. We're doing Shoals Ferry, looking at all those kind of things for us to be able to respond appropriately to people's complaints.
Excellent. And then just a clarification, Sergeant Sir, the 500 complaints last year, those are specific to speeding or cut through or pass through, or are they located in the like places where the traffic calming now, or that's just general citywide?
That's citywide.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and it ranges from parking issues to speeding issues. The vast majority of them are speeding issues, though. If I had to take a stab at it.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, Stephanie, there are no other speakers. Is that request for that correct?
That's it. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate again, everyone out in the audience for your time and taking the effort. I appreciate the meetings that were taking place at BCCI. Kind of like the voter forum, a lot of good things that they do, a lot of good conversations they bring up. I believe one comment, I believe is Miss, actually, I'm not sure, but I thought it was Ms. Etheridge that we typically come back and review this, or we touch bases and have a conversation. Do we need to have any kind of update or follow up to the traffic calming? In this case, we had a couple of new commissioners and it'd been a while since we reviewed it last. So it just seemed like a good time to have a workshop and bring that to discussion. Any other comments from anyone? Other commissioners, final? Yeah, Commissioner Brown and then Mr. Khasho.
So do we have a direction going forward? Or are we going to, at some point, generate some proposals to consider further, or what happens to us?
I believe Mr. Khasho was going to explain part of that. Did you want to go with that? I believe the first part was just to get everyone educated and brought up to speed on what the current process is to get information. I would be interested in seeing the Excel sheet that Mr. Chau shared, just to go through and kind of ponder it and look over it. But no, there was no specific immediate discussion in this one, to my knowledge. It was more a work session to review. Here's the process. Last time we did it, Vice Chair McClean was part of that, and we basically went through and had a discussion like this. And it was a little while later, we actually brought up some discussions to potentially change and modify. And in that discussion, we kind of went back and forth about exactly what was discussed here today, that 67%, and how do you appease the requirements of the process, the cost of the process, everyone involved, and as a voice, are you intentionally not answering, making a statement? And that was some of the things that we dealt with, and we didn't really come to anything that I think, and Vice Chair McClean chime in, there was nothing really that overrode anybody to say, yeah, you know what, we've got to change this. We basically were trying to figure out what is wrong. Is there something wrong with the system that people just, do we need them to explicitly say no? Or do we require them to say, you have to say no? Or, what's the consensus?
Just a quick comment before Mr. Khasho goes. I think last time we brought this up before the commission, we didn't have a consensus on what we should, modify or what we should change in the program. I think originally, in like 98 or 2000, there were, 30 some odd. So it was kind of a stricter eligibility criteria and a stricter, phase 3. Now we may get, 1 to 3 a year. So we could definitely, if the commission, is in favor of making changes, I think, to answer your question, Commissioner Brown, it's up to us. We can say, hey, let's discuss about, revising the program or making changes, small or big, to the program. And like the BCCI, Ms. Lawler said, we can have a discussion with others. We can have a discussion with the NAC. It's really up to us, if we want to make these changes or not.
Thank you. Mr. Khasho?
Yeah, I was thinking about this program for some time. And, We had a few that we went through the whole process and they did not get to where we wanted to be. So my question to the commission is there an interest to bring this discussion up and look at the 67%? Maybe we could reduce it to simple majority, keep everything the same, and just reduce that 67 to 51% maybe. Just think about it. I don't want to put you on the spot now, you know, we don't need an answer now, but think about it, and maybe at the next meeting, we could ask, you wanna bring back the program and we'll have a formal discussion and adopt some changes. So is there an interest to do this?
I would actually like to see that wait a month or two to give BCC. So my understanding from the time that we discussed this was that BCCI was going to have a meeting. That meeting took place. There was a mail that went out by the neighborhood program. I did not understand that when it came by our NAC, that they were asking for representatives in addition to the BCCI, I think. But now that they've had that meeting, I think it would be informative if the BCCI folks went back to their respective NACs, because every NAC has a BCCI representative, and shared that information and talked to what they felt were some of the concerns that we have and some of the concerns they have. Again, same thing. My concern is always if it's hard to gauge and know what to do when you don't have a lot of input. So I'd like to give them time to go back and talk to the NACs and let the NACs hear what BCCI. I assume that because they're meeting, they have a full presentation that they will give. So they will now, the NACs will, or BCCI will pass that back to the NACs and explain how the traffic calming works. I'm sure that they might have places in their areas that they would, and give them a month to have their own meeting and get that back in time. I'm concerned about a turnaround. And I don't see that there's a pressing immediate need to do it next month. I'd like to give them a little bit of time to discuss that amongst BCCI and the NACs, because that's exactly what the neighborhood program is meant to do, in my opinion. Others? But yeah, I would like to see that. I would like to hear some, I'd like to hear feedback from basically the community about what they do as well, because as Vice Chair McClean noted, I think Commissioner Brown, we didn't do anything because there was no consensus. Some people felt that it was fine the way it was. Some people felt that 67% was unattainable. Some people felt it should be 51%. What does it mean to be no? How do you gauge that you've got everybody? It did. There were also questions about how do you get a certain percentage signing on and then they don't reply. They attend, you know, maybe they just attend the meeting and say, oh yes, I'm all for it, and then they go through and find out and they're like, you know what, never mind. So I think we really we never came to a decision before, and there was no I don't think there was anything that pressing before that in our last discussion. We did get a lot of verbiage from some community. One gentleman was a lawyer who made several disclaimers about he was not involved in any way, shape, or form with his employer, but that from a legal standpoint, he offered many suggestions. We took a look at those and gave him some consideration. So I think the same thing would happen here. Mr. Khasho?
Yeah, there is a question in the chat.
Oh.
I believe it is for Sergeant Chau.
Oh, very good. I'm not sure if he is still. Sergeant Chau, question for you. The 85%, oh, I see the 80, well, but to that point, oh, well, okay, to that point, then you can always, the neighborhoods can request that a speed measure and speed patrol be taken. That does not have to be any part of the traffic calming. You can you can call the non-emergency hotline and make a request of the Beaverton Police Department and say, we'd like to have a monitor. We'd like to have one of the film cameras out there, one of the ticket cameras. And they will, they've got a volunteer and a sergeant to work with that. But Sergeant Chau is back. I'll let him answer. It sounds like it's a combination of both that and when and how you would be able to request the camera meter, sir.
Sorry, I had to step away. My deputy chief called me on the phone. So if somebody could answer or ask that question again, I'm here now.
The question is basically in this regard, where the 87% criteria was not met for speeding, was there, can you have increased patrols or other police measures? And I think among those would be something like the cameras or the trailers, the van. And I think in addition to that, it could be how would you request the van, or how would you request added patrol outside of the traffic calming? Because you don't necessarily need to wait for it. So what are some options that I could do if I felt there was speeding in my neighborhood?
If you felt there was speeding, contacting us first, and then we will most likely, if we've had, of course, other complaints, we're gonna probably stick the black box up on one of the poles to monitor speed for 5 to 7 days. That spits out a whole bunch of different reports. One of the BPD volunteers runs that program. He's fantastic, and sends the reports to me and to Officer Barrett, who is my officer who deals with all that, and it runs the 85th percentile. It does hourly, it does daily, it does totals, it does a whole bunch of different things. But anyway, so we would do that to see what we actually have in that situation, and sometimes it's a perception issue where the people just perceive that people are going fast based on where the sidewalks are located, how small the bike lanes are, or whatever it might be, and it could be a perception issue. And so when we get the black box information, we will send it to the person who called us so that they can view all that for themselves and see what is actually happening on their roadway. And then if it's something outside of speeding, if it's something else, then we'll stick an officer on that roadway at that particular time or time frame that they're requesting, and sort of monitor the situation, whether it be a loud exhaust issue or it's a stop sign issue or something like that. We'll actually go out there and sit and watch. Or if it's like the hawk signal, we had a complaint the other day about people running the hawk signal at Greenway and Hall, and we'll sit down there and monitor that to see how big the problem is, the scope of it, to see what our response will be. The vans themselves, though, there's a lot of sort of back end work that has to go into locations for vans, programming those locations for vans. There has to be an actual spot for those vans. There has to be spots for the signage, the proper signage for those. So those are a little more difficult to deploy. There's a number of places in the city that we already have that stuff already set and in place. And they rotate between school zones, different NACs, different parts of the city on a regular basis. That's what they're sort of commanded to do, is rotate around. So those would be our responses. We do have a smart trailer that'll show speed. Sometimes that's just enough to get people to slow down, and it'll flash their speed if they're going over 5 miles over the speed limit or whatever we set it at. It's a pretty smart machine that we just got a couple of months ago that we can make it do just about anything we want it to, and it'll do traffic counts and speed counts also, all wrapped up into the same machine.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Etheridge, I hope that answered your question. Sergeant Chau, appreciate the time on that. Thank you, excellent. Some good points. Perfect, you are welcome. Is there any other comments or concerns, direction? Commissioner Brown, does that make sense? About the timing, direction?
Yeah, I guess I didn't want us to just kind of drop this. I mean, it
Right.
seems like we've got a little bit of momentum going. We've got some people energized. We've got some ideas. We've got different proposals. It sounds like, we've given previously thought to different thresholds in percentages, and there are pros and cons. And, not to lose this, it would
Exactly.
be good to get a follow-up, a month, 2 months, whatever. I understand there are other people doing work, and it'd be good to get whatever more or additional input they might bring. And, maybe it all comes back together in front of us and we chew on it and come up with proposals, assuming there are changes that we think need to be made.
Right. I think one of the things to that point, and I think that Vice Chair McClean had brought it up before, that when we did go through and we've had these reviews, Mr. Khasho has been very good about making sure that we've had, the question's been brought up. Anybody feel there's a need to review that? At one point, the commission had been, solid's not the right word, but I'm trying to think of what the best one is. We'd had very low turnover, and everybody was pretty familiar with the process. Here we've had some new folks, but one of the things that we did ask in the past that we didn't was, and this is a good example, as you said, BCCI has just met, and which is why I recommended they go back to the NACs. We'd like to hear back what their suggestions are, right? This commission has gone through, we've seen a lot of people that have been on the commission for a while. Alternate Cohen was a commissioner before. He's been on here as well. We've seen, and thought and given our considerations and thought and feedback, but it would be interesting to hear what the community has suggestions after hearing what BCCI has and NAC's discussing transportation plans, what they view is that what's the vision down the road? If I put this in, is it going to change traffic? When I ran for city council, for example, one of the questions at that time that came up was always 125th for Greenwood. If you lived in the Greenwood NAC, their question was always, one of their watermarks was always, what do you think about 125th going through? Well, the consensus was you're not always going to punch roads through everywhere just because you can, even though the right of way was all set up in there. But at the same time, is there ever going to be a need where that road has to go through in order to accommodate traffic? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But those are the kind of visions I think that help the commission decide when we hear back from the community, as opposed to us saying, well, here's how we think it's going to work. So yeah, I'd love to see it continue on, and I hope that we do get some feedback from them as well. Vice Chair McClean?
One last question for Mr. Khasho, I just remembered. Are there any traffic devices that can be installed without the calming? For example, just painting a crosswalk, or like Sergeant Shaw said, those, flashing your speed signs. Are there any devices that you are able to use without going through the traffic calming project or program?
Good one.
Any striping, signing, speed display signs, it could go through without, traffic commission process. Although they're expensive, we prefer to go through the traffic commission process because you can't have them everywhere.
Okay.
Crosswalks, yeah, but crosswalks has to go to the come back to the traffic commission. But
okay.
Also there's a criteria for everything we do. But there are simple things that can be done to improve safety, reduce speeds. We can do these without going through the traffic calming program. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. That was an excellent question. All right, then, with that in mind, I think that pretty much sums it up for now. I think we've got a good handle on anything. Any final comments or something? In the meantime, then, I believe that Mr. Khasho, do we have something for next month? I'm on the wrong. in the wrong packet here. Do we have any, sorry, there was no old business that I saw. Was there any new business by commissioners for any other cause or reason? Perfect. Then finally, is there anything going on specifically for next month, sir?
In April, we will not have a meeting.
Okay, very
Thank
good then.
Yeah, you
All
need
right.
a break.
Okay, sounds good then. Well, we'll hope that the neighborhoods will go. I'll check with my BCCI rep and see what their vision is, and give the BCI a chance for another meeting. So we'll see
Yeah.
how that goes and find out.
I want to thank the commission for listening tonight and letting others, come in and speak. I think it brings new ideas, and it make us hear what neighborhood, wants. That's how I feel about it. I think it was a great workshop, and whenever you're ready to jump in again and tackle the traffic calming program, I'm ready to do that. And
Okay.
have a good night.
All right, sounds good. All right, then with that, we will see everybody perhaps in May. If not, then we'll see you the next time that we have some things to attend to. So thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time. We are officially adjourned then. Stay safe and be careful. Stephanie, thank you so much for all your work and effort. Mr. Khasho, nice job. But Stephanie, thank you so much for all your help in the packets, the work and the emails, the video recordings, the gateway, everything you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.